Today's message is Exodus chapter 3 verse 5, and in this scenario we have Moses at the burning bush, and remember he was told to take his sandals off his feet, for the place where he stood was holy ground. Of course, we know that it wasn't the bush or the mountain that was holy, it was the very presence of Yahweh or Jehovah that made it holy. But whenever I was looking at the passage in Exodus chapter 3, and it is quite fascinating, just the initial 6 verses, I did wonder why God said it was holy ground. And whenever we think about the life of Moses, we see that he had to learn that holiness was essential to God's plan in his life. And then that sort of triggered the thought of the importance of holiness in the life of Moses. Of course, as Christians, positionally we're holy, we're set apart for God, but in practice that needs to be true as well. We need to live holy and pure lives, completely dedicated to the Lord and separated to Him, and that will involve a lot of decisions in our daily life as to how we maintain that holiness. But I picked out 4 events in the book of Exodus where the holiness of God was essential. There are many more, and maybe we can develop those into a later video. But from the book of Exodus, the first one is Exodus chapter 15, and it was the Song of Moses. Remember, Moses God had miraculously opened the way for him to bring the Israelites across the Red Sea. You remember that it would have been roughly about 2 million people who came out from Egypt, and then of course they were across the Red Sea, chased by the Egyptians into the sea, and God preserved the Israelites and brought them through. What a miraculous scene it must have been when the Israelites got across. We read there that the Israelites had a great understanding of God's character and power, and why would they not when they just crossed the Red Sea? But in the Song of Moses, Exodus chapter 15 verse 11, we read, who is a God like unto you? And one of the characteristics is glorious in holiness. Exodus chapter 15 and verse 11. Then I thought of Moses on Mount Sinai, Exodus chapter 19 verses 23 and 24. You remember that Moses up the mountain, and God comes down to Moses and says, go back down and stop the people breaking through, because the place where I speak to you is holy. And of course it was in the next chapter that Moses got the 10 commandments. And then in chapter 33, when Moses is seeking God, you remember that it was said that Moses said, show me your glory. And of course we're aware that God said, you cannot see my face and live, but I'll hide you in the cleft of the rock, and I'll cover you with my hand, and you can see my back parts. But there we saw something of the holiness of God, or Moses got a glimpse of the holiness of God's presence there in chapter 33. And then the last scenario is the completion of the tabernacle. You remember in chapter 40 of Exodus, the last chapter of Exodus, we read that the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle, and Moses couldn't enter the tent because of the glory of the Lord. And so 4 scenarios in which the holiness of God is absolutely essential. And so the 4 scenarios are the Song of Moses, Exodus chapter 15 verse 11, Mount Sinai, the 10 Commandments, chapter 19 verses 23 and 24, seeking God personally in Exodus chapter 33, when Moses says, show me your glory. And then finally in chapter 40, the completion of the tabernacle. And just a reminder that we all need to live holy lives as Christians. Thank you for listening.